Well, hello, everyone, and welcome. So happy to see you all here today after a little bit of not exactly a break, but last week I was doing a webinar at this time. So we are back live. And today I'm really excited. I have an awesome guest that I'm going to be chatting with today. Dietitian extraordinaire. Yeah, don't you love that? Staci Hendrickson. And so I want to give a nice, big, warm welcome to Staci. How are you today, Staci?
I am very good. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, super happy to have you as well. We're going to be talking about a really interesting topic today, everybody. I have some personal experience with this topic myself in my own family, and we brought the expert in terms of picky eating and the ARFID diagnosis. So we are going to delve into a really super interesting topic today. And I will say in advance, so especially if you're a dietitian and you're interested in developing your expertise around the subject area, around picky eating, and the relatively new diagnosis, ARFID, ARFID, you're really going to enjoy this interview today. Again, I'm going to be talking with dietitian Staci Hendrickson. And Staci has built an amazing practice helping children, adults, and adolescents, really, the full gamut in terms of the population to really overcome and, to work with this disorder, right? So they can, I would just say, get their lives back. And you're going to hear more about that in a little while. So let me just give you an overview of some of the things we're going to touch on. So we're going to talk about how building your expertise in the picky eating niche can actually help catapult your practice results, adding to both your bottom line, which is, of course, very important, but also that sense of professional fulfillment. We're going to be touching on the scope of practice for especially RDNs in terms of identifying and treating ARFID and picky eating in clinical practice. We'll be touching on some tools for success, right? So we'll be talking a little bit, kind of high level, an overview of the treatment strategies and protocols, really with the intention of helping you to increase your confidence and competency in this practice area, as always, to help you to be more successful in private practice and to be more successful with your clients. And then towards the end, we're going to be talking about next steps. So really excited to share this opportunity with you in terms of, really just such a phenomenal workshop opportunity for you to dig deeper and really, really become more of an expert in this particular area. So with that being said, for those of you that don't know me, welcome. My name is Lesli Bitel, and I am a business strategist and coach. I work with a variety of different types of practitioners in private practice, lots of dietitians, naturopathic doctors, chiropractors, really anyone that is wanting to catapult their results, right? Because private practice can be overwhelming, knowing what to do, what strategies to implement, in which order. So ultimately what I help you to do is to build a private practice that you love, serving the people that you're meant to serve, and really helping you to make a wonderful living doing that work. All right, so that's a little bit about me. What I'd love to do is turn it over to Staci. So Staci is one of my rock star clients, and really so proud of her, all of her accomplishments, but I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about her background. And specifically, I think probably what I know we're all curious about is how did you come about this particular, niche? So tell us a little bit about your background and maybe a little bit about your story in terms of how you landed in this particular area.
Sure, Lesli. Thank you very much for that very gracious introduction.
My pleasure. All true.
So I landed in kind of working in this field because I started out in private practice in 1998. part of my private practice, a large part of it was I did contract consulting work for 0 to 3 early intervention in the state of Kansas, which there's 0 to 3 early intervention programs in every state in the nation. It's a federal program. And within that program, I'm working with kids ages birth to 3 and their families who have developmental delays or developmental disabilities. And what I was finding is I was working with so many kids who had very limited amounts of foods that they would eat for a whole wide array of reasons. And I think, one of the things that people need to understand about this is there are so many reasons why babies, infants, toddlers, adolescents, people in their 30s or their 40s might develop a very, very limited food repertoire. So anyway, I was facing a lot of these kids, working with a lot of them, feeling like I didn't have the tools to help them. There were some feeding programs in a larger community in Kansas, but they really weren't very successful. Like we were having people go there and it wasn't helping. And one of the occupational therapists that I worked with, went to an SOS, sequential oral sensory approach to feeding training. She came back, she was like, oh my gosh, Staci, you have to go to this. This is practice changing. This is what we've been missing. So the next year because 0 to 3 paid for me to go, I got to go. It was a 4-day workshop. And I got the certification, and it was practice changing. And it was practice changing in my early intervention work. It was practice changing in my private practice too, because it really I looked at things through a very different lens. Because now when people were like, whether they're 2 or 22, oh, I don't eat vegetables, instead of being, oh, okay.
Right.
I would say, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
What is it about vegetables you don't like? What about, and usually could figure out a way to find some vegetables that they would eat. And then I was fortunate enough to be able to go and get the advanced training. I went and actually spent a week in their clinic. So that's how I kind of got started. And then that's how I've kept going with it. Yeah.
Okay. I love it. So, so you had an opportunity to get extra training, and it sounds like it really filled a gap, right?
Yes.
And it really allowed you to dig deeper instead of just saying, okay, you don't eat vegetables. Okay, let's move on to the next thing, right? You were like, okay, hang on a second. Let's explore this a little bit, right?
Right.
So I think that in of itself is incredibly helpful in practice. So what I'm really curious about, and I'm guessing our audience is as well, is the spectrum of picky eating. And tell us about that spectrum, and also this diagnosis, ARFID, because my guess, before you told me about that, I honestly didn't know. And, again, I have kind of a personal history in this area. I didn't work in it clinically, but let's just say I have a very picky eater. He's 20 now, and I would say he's still pretty picky. So, yeah. So we did, some interventions when he was, younger. So I do have a pretty high degree of familiarity, but I did not know about this ARFID diagnosis. So can you tell us, like, how does this manifest? How does it start? And how do you know when intervention is actually indicated?
Yeah. So there is definitely a spectrum amongst kind of picky eating, problem feeding disorders. So kind of on the less concerning end of it, you have, again, kind of like my example might be that maybe they don't eat vegetables, or I don't like casseroles with things mixed together, like those kinds of things, that maybe it's just one certain type of food or food group or food scenario, but it really doesn't impact them socially, doesn't impact them mentally, it doesn't impact them nutritionally. And anybody who's had kids knows that most toddlers go through some phase of this at some point.
Oh yeah.
So as far as whether to intervene or not, if it's a 2-year-old that's just refusing to eat anything that's green that week, no, like that's just, they're going to move on.
Right.
But again, if it's like somebody who's 20 and has had this for a really, really long time, and they are saying, you know, I want to be able to eat some vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
I know I need to. Then it would be, yes, we can step in and we can help that person with or without a diagnosis.
I see.
You know, we can still help them with their nutritional problem.
Okay. So what is the ARFID diagnosis?
So the ARFID diagnosis would be more on the farther end of the spectrum. And there's also, you know, there's something called pediatric feeding disorder. There was something called selective eating disorder, some other diagnoses that they all address much of the same thing. So that's where most of the time it's the person eats less than 20 foods total.
Wow.
They are malnourished. So it is affecting their physical health, and it's greatly impacting social, emotional as well. So if it's a younger child, maybe mom is having to fix them a separate meal. They can't go to certain restaurants. They can't go stay at grandma and grandpa's house. Like, it's really impacting them significantly, socially, emotionally, mentally. Older individuals, you know, I have clients that, you know, part of the reason they want to work with me is because they want to be able to go to any restaurant their friends want to go to, instead of it being, well, we'll go here or here because that's where Jane will eat.
Right.
So again, it's impacting them pretty significantly, socially, emotionally, mentally, and then sometimes physically as well. Yeah. And
in terms of their nutrition status, right?
Right.
And what were you going to say?
So ARFID was kind of created, I think, to try to catch people that maybe didn't fit in some of the other diagnoses that were there. But one of the things with ARFID is if the person's food aversions, food refusal, if all of that can be explained by a different diagnosis, a medical diagnosis, then that's what you want to go with that person. So for an example would be, you know, if somebody had, I have a client, this is a client of mine right now, they had nasal throat cancer. And because of that treatment for that, they have no taste and no smell. And so there's not a lot of foods that they want to eat. But that's not ARFID, because that's fully explainable by you can't taste or smell anything. That's why you don't want to eat anything.
It's not picky eating.
Yeah, right. This isn't, and ARFID is a psychiatric diagnosis also. But but then the tools and the techniques are pretty much the same. You know, we're going to still use a lot of the same tools and techniques to try to increase the person's repertoire.
Interesting. Okay, so it's clearly a spectrum.
Yes.
And so in terms of when it's time to intervene, if it's on kind of the milder side, it sounds like it's really more dependent on the degree to which it is becoming an obstacle in that person's life, right?
Correct. Yes.
And if it's more on the severe side, you know, moving towards ARFID, then how does that work in terms of intervention? I suppose there's like all kinds of issues and so the person's just really struggling to get through life. Right.
So typically what you want to do is you do want to always rule out that this isn't some other condition. So for example, you want to make sure they're not avoiding all grain products because they actually have celiac or something like that. So good medical workup is really important. You want to make sure that they're not having some type of oral motor issue or something like that. That might be more of a speech language pathologist referral. So, you know, there is some kind of rule out process there. And then, but if it's like, okay, this is something I think I can help you with, then, the next step is a good thorough nutrition assessment. And this is awesome stuff I'm going to cover in my webinar, my course that I have set up is, kind of what specific types of questions do you ask nutritional assessment process when you're working with these clients, to then be able to get the process going of actually increasing their food repertoire, which is what the bottom line goal is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. I love that. So question for you. So can you describe, so I'm guessing, I have a pretty high number of dietitians that are probably either online now watching or going to catch the replay, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things I'm thinking they're probably wondering is this in our scope of practice, and to what degree?
Right. So within our scope of practice, the key is, do you have the training to do this? Have you received training to do this? So fresh out of school, no training. No, this probably isn't in our scope of practice.
Right.
But if you get training and education around it, it certainly is within our scope of practice. And I think something that was very eye-opening to me when I began working in early intervention, because I worked so closely with SLPs and OTs, they don't have feeding training either fresh out of school. So just because somebody is an SLP or somebody is an OT doesn't mean they do feeding or they really even know much about it. It is for those professions, it is also I have to go get a training and I have to make this more of my specialty or my niche of what I do.
Absolutely. So a deeper dive is absolutely necessary in terms of training. Yeah.
But if a dietitian does that deeper dive, then it's certainly within our scope of practice. And like I said, sometimes there may be a referral out to other professionals for other specific reasons, but then you may still be part of that team.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Which is, it can be very appealing to be part of a team. I hear that quite frequently. Like, I really want to be part of a team. So in terms of opportunities and specific niches that allow you to do that, I would definitely say this is one that really does that. So, okay. So it sounds like, especially with continuing education and more training to develop this area of expertise, that it sounds like it is within our scope.
Yes.
Of course, with the exception of, like if the person's not eating because they have issues swallowing, like that clearly is not our scope.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. So, and how exciting just to, I think it's so interesting how our profession as dietitians, like there's so many things we can do. It never ceases to amaze me, right? Like this is a whole nother area where we can really help people and just make such a huge difference. So what I would love to do is, I'd love it if you could give us like an example of, maybe like a little case study, so like just a high level of someone that you helped, kind of paint the picture of what that looked like and how did you know when to intervene and, what ended up happening with the person.
Yeah. So I have a person right now who I'm working with who's just been a delight. So this is a 18-year-old. And she reached out to me, found me via the internet, and reached out to me because she's been a picky eater, problem feeder her whole life. As an infant, as a toddler, they did do feeding therapy. Unfortunately, the therapy that they got was what's called flooding therapy, where it's like the child is held down and forced to try these foods. So it was very traumatic for her. Didn't work. Very traumatic. Kind of more so almost reinforced.
Absolutely.
The process. So she reached out to me because this amazing kid is going to go to Europe. And she was like, I don't want to go to Europe, a picky eater. She's like, I don't want to do that. I want to be able to go there and go wherever, you know, and eat the food and fully
enjoy.
experience. And because she's going to be over there several years, she's going to school there. And so we started working together, I guess about January. And, you know, using the techniques that I'm trained in. So it's looking at what will she eat and how do we chain that, connect that to more foods, and how do we broaden her out slowly. She does some challenges with me, and I do all this virtually. She does some challenges with me in our sessions, and then she does challenges on her own as well. And so we've been kind of doing this process, and I usually meet with people. This is a fairly frequent intervention because you have to keep the desensitization going. So I'm usually meeting with people once a week to once every 2, at the most 3 weeks. And so anyway, we've been working through this, and now she's added like 15 things. She's broadened out of a lot of her, like, because when we first started working, she would only eat like 2 kinds of cheese, and now she'll eat pretty much any kind of cheese except really strong cheeses, which I get.
Some people just don't like them, right?
Right. So anyway, so she's feeling just so much better about this process of, because she's leaving in like a month now. And so we're going to continue to work because we've got a few more things that she wants to try to add in, and we need to broaden her vegetables out a little bit more, hopefully, before she leaves. But so that's an example of how, you know, this can be really rewarding work. With people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. To be able to see that kind of growth, and just, you know, to be able to go to Europe and I mean, it's really exciting. And this sounds like an amazing girl or young lady, because, you know, she knew she needed help and she sought it out, which is, it's such a great story. So I'm curious, just kind of an off the cuff question. Like, you know, you see a lot of, you know, teenagers, young adults, who won't eat meat, right? And it just sort of made me wonder if you see a connection with, I suppose it depends on why they won't eat it, right?
Right. And
So,
that's the digging a lot deeper into, is it an ethical type of such thing for them? Is it a texture? Because meat is actually a very common textural issue that a lot of people have. It's also a very common food that a lot of really young children have a hard time eating successfully. And so that can carry on and carry through. So it's that digging deeper, and let's try to see where we can go with that. And I actually do have she's in her mid-20s, that it's a texture thing with the meat. But we've been able to find a couple of things that have been okay, and hopefully we can keep building on that. Right.
It's interesting. It just makes me wonder, because I have a couple kids in that age group that are vegetarian, right? And and it's just so interesting because I think that, at least with one of my kids, it started very young and it's a textural thing. And then over time, I think that, you know, it just, you know, expanded to all the other right?
Right.
Environmental, ethical, you know, like, I just don't like it. It's disgusting. It's gross, you know, all of these things. So it's like really, really deeply entrenched. I don't even know how, like, we would unravel that, because it's like the line is in the sand, right?
Yes.
It's like there's so many reasons. But I have a hunch that it started as a food aversion and a textural issue, you know, because it does require a lot of chewing and people kind of get, sometimes that's not super pleasant for people.
And that is one thing I'm going to cover a lot in my course.
Yes.
And I have quite a bit of motivational interviewing training myself also.
Yes.
Is because especially with this population and working with this population, they have to have buy-in. This is not something you can make people do.
Right.
You can't make them do it when they're 6 months old. You can't make them do it when they're 36. Like they have to have some buy-in. So also really, again, those deep dive questions and really probing with them and helping them to come to why do I want to work on this? How is this impacting my life? How am I going to benefit if I do this work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I really do want to talk. Why don't we do this? I want to talk about your program, your course. And let's save, I do have one last question for you. I really want to learn more about like the food challenge process and, like what that's all about, right? Just to kind of give a quick overview. But why don't we first segue into, because I want to make sure that we have time to cover a conversation in terms of next steps for those professionals that are on the line now, anyone that's going to listen to the replay. What do you have for us?
So I have a live virtual course that is pending approval for 6 CPEs for dietitians.
Right.
And the course is called Helping People with ARFID and Extreme Picky Eating, Tools for Success. So,
great.
And what I'm going to cover in that course is the kind of assessment process, how you educate the client and help them have buy-in, and then kind of decide on your next steps, and then how to implement food challenges using sensory-based tools and techniques, which is like food chaining, it's environmental exposures. It can be even things like helping to clean up after dinner. So you have to touch the stuff that you don't want to eat. There's a whole array
exposure,
exposure.
Right?
There's
like
a whole,
even if it's,
and that's one of the things that I think people don't understand about systematic desensitization is it is a process of exposure. It is, if you're working with food, it's the same thing as if somebody's scared of spiders. You don't start with the spider on their hand right here in front of them. That's not where you start. Right.
That would push you over the edge for sure. That would be like your client that you described, right? The poor thing that they forced her to eat it. Like that was
right.
So you start small. You start with baby steps.
And so that's what I'm going to spend a lot of time in the course on is how do you know where to start? How do you start? How do you go through this process that you are bringing the person along rather than scaring them away?
Okay.
Or potentially making it worse even.
Right. Doing harm, which would be horrible.
Yeah.
So
and then,
tell us, keep going. I want to hear all about
and then,
it.
Kind of the last part of the course then is also then how to start turning this over more to the person. Because initially it is pretty intense, like I said, weekly, sometimes even more than once a week. And then you can slowly start backing away and giving the person more and more responsibility to do this themselves because you've taught them how to do it. They know the tools, they understand the process of how to go through this. And so then you're setting them up for that long-term success, right? Which I love that. I love doing that with people.
You want them to be independent and to be able to do this and continue their journey without being reliant on you, which is so amazing.
And what that looks like is I've got another client and I only see her once a month now. And last time I saw her, she was like, Staci, you'd be so proud of me. We went to this restaurant and I ordered the sandwich and it came and it had pickles on it. And I wasn't thinking it was going to have pickles on it. She was like, but I didn't freak out. I just took the pickles off and I ate it anyway. And I know people might be being like, well, why wouldn't you just do that? But for a lot of these individuals, before she would have just freaked out and not ate the sandwich.
Right. Oh, I know. It would have just, I got that. Like it's almost traumatic and it's really hard to get over. Right. And for people that don't struggle with this, it's like, just take the pickles off, move on, right? Like, no biggie. Oh yeah. This is different. This is definitely different. So that's huge.
Yeah.
If she can, like, that's a great example.
Yeah. Now she knows exactly what to do when she gets in a situation like that. Right.
Yeah. And she had support from you to be able to do that. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely can see how this area of expertise would be incredibly fulfilling as a professional. I mean, from a business standpoint, of course, I like to look at the business potential. It is a great niche, not only because it gives you that professional gratification of being able to see someone to, really make progress and like profound changes in one's life. It's also one of those, you're going to get repeat business, right? Like, and I know it's not all about that. I completely get it. But like some niches, let's just say it, some niches are more valuable than others, right? It's just a fact. And like from a business standpoint, I think this is a really viable one. Do you have a sense of how common this is?
Yeah. So in children, so kind of like pre-adolescent and below, it's really estimated that about 6% of the population has like full-blown diagnosed ARFID or pediatric feeding disorder. So that's at less than 20 foods. It's significantly impacting them.
Okay.
And then about 30% of the population has kind of that in the middle. So it's not significant impact nutritional, but it's also more than just, I don't like my stuff mixed together. It's they're kind of somewhere in the middle there, that maybe they might have a couple different kinds of food groups that they don't eat, or a couple different types of textures that they don't like. And it does have some impact on them socially, emotionally, impacts their families. And then in adults, it's a fairly new ARFID's a very new diagnosis. And so looking at this in adults is fairly new, but the estimate's about 10%.
Wow. Okay. I gotta say, I'm surprised by that. So there's, so like from a practice building perspective, it is relatively prevalent in all ages. Even adults, which like this kind of diagnosis, I would always think of kids, right? Like you just don't really associate this with adults, but so it's very prevalent. It does require repeat intervention, which I think is part of the criteria. People know they have this problem. And I would say if it's really, I mean, not everyone's going to be motivated to fix it, but it does sound like there's a fair number of people, like if it's really impacting their lives on a negative level, they're going to be motivated and there's going to be a sense of urgency. In my opinion, that all adds up to a great niche, right? A really phenomenal practice area. So tell us this workshop. So guys, and just so you're clear, I put the bit.ly link on the screen. It's bit.ly/picky eating webinar. So check it out. It looks like an amazing workshop. Highly recommend it. Even if you're not planning just to like switch niches, I really feel like almost regardless of what your niche is, having these tools to be able to help people add, foods to their repertoire can make a huge difference based on the work that we do as dietitians, right? So really want to encourage you to check it out. Can you tell us, a little bit about who you think this program is best, who's best suited for the program?
Yeah, so I think definitely any dietitians that are working with in pediatrics, and especially in very young pediatrics, because you're going to see these kids. You're going to see these kids for sure. Anyone who works with eating disorders or disordered eating of any form, I think would very much benefit from this as well, because what I have found is, because I have this other lens that I look at things through, that I have worked with people who other dietitians have said, oh, it's just your eating disorder. That's just your eating disorder. That's why you won't eat that. And then I talk with them and I find out they haven't eaten that since they were 9 months old. And this is why, and these are the reasons behind it. And if we can look at it through this lens and come at it through this approach, then we can get somewhere.
Oh, that's fascinating. I can absolutely see how that would be such a synergistic thing, right? As a professional, eating disorders, and I mean, amazing. Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah. And then, like you said, too, I think anybody who's doing a lot of outpatient work where you're trying to get people to change to change what they eat, this might be helpful, because again, maybe if you're looking at things through a little bit different lens with people, you might have a different approach to take, or a different tact that you can take with them.
Right. Yeah. I absolutely can see how that would work. So, is there anything else that you want to share about this opportunity to take a deeper dive with you? And really, I mean, guys, I think the key, at least from my perspective, is, what do you have to lose, right? Like, if I were in practice, I would do it. I'll just say, I would just do it, because I can see how learning these skills would be so advantageous, honestly, regardless. I can't really think of another niche, or I can't think of an area of expertise where this would not be beneficial, quite honestly. So is there anything else you want to share about it? It's a one-day workshop, right?
Yes, it's a one-day 6-hour workshop.
Okay.
Friday, August 6th. And then the other thing I would share out there is, if somebody's thinking, I have these people, I have these people right now, but I can't do the workshop. I do case consults as well.
Oh, good.
So that is where, the person has an opportunity, a dietitian, to actually go over cases with me, and I can help guide step by step using this recommend.
It's like supervision, right?
Right, supervision.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you recommend people reach out to you? And by the way, Danielle, hey Danielle, Danielle has a great question. Can you see that? How will the webinar be recorded? I think that is your webinar, not this one.
I am going to record it. Yeah.
So, yeah. So in other words, if the person can't make that date, they can still sign up and get all the, the materials and the recording and all that good stuff, so they can listen to it at a later date. Great question. Thank you. Okay. Awesome. So it's a one day. You can get the recording, you can get the materials, you can take a deeper dive with Staci. And I would say, in addition, if any of you are like, yeah, I feel like I need some one-to-one hand-holding, because I'm seeing this in my practice right now. So how can people find you? Where would you like to send anyone that's interested in reaching out?
Yeah, so they can find me at my website, which is www.breakfreefromfood.com. They can contact me through that. So it's breakfreefromfood.com.
Okay.
Or they can also email me too, which is healthybalancenow@yahoo.com.
Okay. Okay, great. What a great website URL. I love that. Breakfreefromfood.com. That's a good one.
Pretty much sums up what I do.
It pretty much does, right? Yeah, that's amazing. Awesome. Okay, guys. So, I know we were going to circle back momentarily. I wanted to ask you about the food chaining. Okay. Can you give us just a little bit more I guess, information. I mean, my takeaway is that the food chaining and exposure, like consistent, repetitive exposure, is really the crux of the treatment model, right? In terms of helping people move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Is that synonymous with food chaining? Is that really what food chaining is?
So food chaining is one aspect of exposure. So you have, you always want to have in place what's called environmental exposures. So that's, they're sitting at the table with other people eating other things that they don't like, that they have to look at and smell and see.
Okay.
They're helping to cook in the kitchen. They're cooking things other than just what they eat.
Mm-hmm.
They're helping to clean up. Let's touch it. Let's throw it away.
Right. They're exposed to the
right.
aromas, right? Like
yep.
the smell can really be difficult for people.
Mm-hmm.
So that counts.
Yeah, that
right?
counts. And it's actually really, really important. So that's one part of it, is environmental exposures, and I have a whole bunch of different ways to do that with people. And then the other part of it is the food chaining, the actual food exposure. And so like a really, I think a great example of this would be I have a person I'm doing case consult with right now, and we just got done going through this with, she's going to do it with her person she's working with. They like Cheerios, but they only like Honey Nut Cheerios.
Okay.
And they have only had General Mills brand Honey Nut Cheerios. That's it.
Okay.
So what we're going to start with is a different brand of a Honey Nut Cheerio type of a product. Yeah. And then a Cheerio, General Mills Cheerio, in a different flavor.
Oh, okay. Got it. So you change one little thing.
Right.
Not like the brand flavor, the this, the that.
So that's going to be the first. The first chain is going to be about 4 or 5 different Cheerios.
Okay.
If that goes really well, then the next step will be, well, let's go to a different kind of a cereal that is still crunchy and maybe a similar flavor, but is a different shape.
Ah.
And if that goes well, then we can keep, and one of the things that I talk to people about doing is like looking for bang for your buck, right? Because if we can get somebody to where they can eat 15 or 20 different kinds of cereal instead of one, all right, that's great. Because any hotel they stay in, any, person's house they go to, they go to college in a dorm, wherever, there's always cereal. There's always cereal.
Right. There's absolutely.
So we're setting this person up for always feeling like I can find something to eat. Like I'll be okay.
Yeah.
I
love that. Okay. Great. So that is an overview on food chaining. We're just consistently exposing the person in a variety of different ways. Everything counts. My guess is they get a lot of homework. Right? Like, here's your homework, right? Like, here's what you got to do between sessions. And we're just making teeny changes, like additions. And like, we're not changing the whole thing overnight, so it doesn't cause undue anxiety and stress. And in some cases, even trauma for the person.
Yes. Right.
Okay.
Right.
I love that. Yeah. Okay. Well, guys, I tell you what, again, if I had my practice, I'd be signing up for this workshop in a nanosecond. So go check it out. Go to bit.ly/picky eating webinar. Check it out. Remember, you can get the recordings, or the recording. I guess it's a singular. You get the material. You get access to our expert, Staci. And if you need, mentoring, a little more support in terms of, supervision, you helping your particular clients in your practice, Staci's available for that too. All right. Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing. This has really been a great topic. I'm delighted to be able to, somehow shine a little light on this topic, right?
Yeah,
Amongst
thank you.
practitioners. It's a really important topic. So, and thank you for doing this amazing work in the world.
Thank you for having me on. It's been fun.
Great. My pleasure. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye,
I hope
everyone.
you have a wonderful day, an awesome 4th if you're here in the States. And I'll look forward to seeing you all. We will be back next week. All right. So bye for now.